Hello again. I'd like to say a little bit today about shadows and how we can interpret them in our modern day lives. We tend not to think or dwell too much on shadows in our modern lives because when we feel a little low, when we feel a little depressed, when we feel that things aren't quite working for us, when we feel a little bit uncomfortable emotionally or physically or mentally. In earlier times we might have said that a shadow has crept in and is influencing us. And although this could sound maybe a little bit superfluous even, that we shouldn't really need to think like this, it's part of understanding what is actually happening to us if we accept that there is an influence that is affecting us in some way when we don't feel so good. I'd like to illustrate the fact that when we're talking about a shadow, we're talking about something that isn't real. We're talking about the idea that we're perhaps not actually looking at something directly in the eye. Now, I don't want this to sound too harsh because some people feel even more uncomfortable if you mention that they should start looking things in the eye. It's more, I suppose, a case of acceptance. If we don't feel so good, then by labelling it and calling it a shadow, the shadow of discomfort, the shadow of despair, the shadow of depression, the shadow of pain, if we give it a label, then we are actually personifying it. And by personifying it, we are returning to an animistic way of thinking. And because of that label, then we can actually say, this is what is happening to me. This is how I feel. And more than anything else, this is very, very caring. This kind of folkloric state of mind is actually extremely caring. So I'd like you to reflect on this a little and understand that it's possible to label something and to help yourself feel a little better. It's part of an ongoing healing process to do this. Personification is something that we seem to have almost developed a phobia about these days. We can't always feel we can label something, but by doing this, it really does help us to identify with the way we are feeling. Sometimes I've introduced workshops around this, around the idea of labelling something we feel uncomfortable with. We don't have to really come out and say, this is how I feel, but to ourselves, if we just, say, this is the shadow of my discomfort, this is the shadow of my pain. Emotionally, I feel not very good, I feel angry, I feel frustrated, I feel fear, I'm scared. I mean, it could be any number of things. And by sticking a label on it and saying, this is the shadow of the relevant thing I'm going through, then the personification itself is a real part of the healing process. And now we did this for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, a long time ago. And it's my belief that when we do this, we can talk about things constructively to ourselves, or even to other people if we want to. we can identify with what's going on for us, and we can actually deal with what is going on for us. Now again, I don't want to sound too harsh. This is all about loving yourself. This is all about understanding yourself. It's mainly about understanding what we have to go through in our modern lives. Life is difficult, and if we can find a way to approach what is happening to us with the idea of identifying with it, then we're going to feel a whole lot better. Just to give an example, if I feel annoyed at something somebody has said to me, then it's really equivalent of this. I feel very annoyed. And this black mask represents a shadow. Now it doesn't mean to say I'm bad, it doesn't mean to say I'm horrible. All it means is that I'm feeling a natural human emotion, anger, that will pass, it will pass, but by identifying with it and understanding it, I end up understanding myself more because I'm giving it a label. Now don't be afraid of all these feelings. Allow yourself to label them and experience them. And then the opposite of shadow is substance. This. If we give these things an image, then it's the label. It's admitting that there's something wrong. It's giving ourselves the opportunity to heal something, which I think is pretty good, actually. So these are very useful for personifying what is going on for us. I used to use these in my workshops, and I still do occasionally, but I want to do it more because I think we have a need to identify, because we're all afraid a lot of the time of what we're feeling. So remember that shadows are unreal in the sense that there's something you might be experiencing that you're not putting a label on. As soon as you put a label on it, you identify with it, and then a lot of the time it makes it so much easier. It takes the pressure off, and you can then find a way of moving on and feeling happier about who you are and the fact that you're human and you're going to experience these things. And yeah, hopefully this folkloric state of mind will help you to feel a lot better about yourself. Have a think about this. I'll talk more in depth about it as I go along, but please do give it some thought. It's a very, very old concept. It's a very old idea. So, thanks for listening.